Oh, hello, yes, hello viewer. Well, there might be more than one this time because the last video was watched about 500 times, which is quite phenomenal, really. Anyway, I thought I'd crack on with my, as I said, I'm going to do this, is trying to complete, or try to do, I don't think I'll ever be finished with the story, is try to go through as many Bible stories as possible and actually read them. Now, the story I want to do is, obviously you guessed in the title, is the one about Cain and Abel. Now, most of you, if you're ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, will believe they know this story really, really well. They'll say, I know the Cain and Abel story. There's absolutely nothing that I need to go through for you to tell us that I'll get some new understanding. And well, I believe the same too. And anybody from any sort of religious upbringing, it doesn't matter if you're Jehovah's Witness, if you are a believer in the Bible, that you'll still think you know the Cain and Abel story and there's nothing that we can learn about it. Now, the thing about it is we only knew or were taught that story or read that story with one perspective. And that's the perspective of people trying to teach that story, of trying to show God in a good light with his dealings with man. So I'm able now to read for the very first time the Cain and Abel story as somebody who's reading it with fresh eyes. And I only read it today, well, I only read it about an hour ago. I printed it off to make sure I had all the verses. And it's the very first time I've ever read it. And yet I've read this story loads of times when I was a Jehovah's Witness. And this is the first time I've actually really read it and tried to understand what this story is teaching us. And that's what I want to do. I just want to read it and give my perspective on this, and hopefully other people will get an understanding of this as well. Because I always thought, and hold on a second. I always thought that there was something a little bit off with this story. When I read it several times when I was with the witnesses, I thought there was something a little bit off with it. And now I've read this for the very first time, I know there's an awful lot off with it. And beforehand I could never really put my finger on what was wrong with it. Now I totally get what was wrong with it. So I'm going to crack on it and go through these verses. This is from, I don't know which version of the Bible is it, but I think that they're all very much the same. So it's not the New World Translation, because as I said before, I don't have any Jehovah's Witness material or any biblical stuff, Bibles in my house anymore. And hopefully I never will. Anyway, we'll crack on. The Cain and Abel story. Adam made love to his wife Eve. Okay, very good. Natural, I suppose. And she became pregnant. Good. Now, is just one point I want to pick up here. Firstly is, surely when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden and he'd seen all the animals making love, sorry, so scrap them. When he'd seen all the animals mating, and he looked on them and thought, right, I want to do that. And then when he had Eve, I'm pretty sure one of the first things he would have done when he would have responded to a naked, imagine this, he's seeing in front of him a naked, perfect woman who for the first time he has a physical, sexual reaction to. Hopefully he never did when he saw an ape or a sheep. Let's hope that he only at that point became sexually aroused for another being. And it would have been the sight of seeing a naked, perfect woman. You know, if you're a fit, young, healthy man and you have a naked, perfect woman in front of you, obviously things can happen. And Adam at that point would have known what he's supposed to do, because he would have been seen all the animals at it. He would have known, right, well, here we go, there we go, job's a good one, I know what I'm going to do here. So I struggle with this. For a kick-off is, surely before the whole bit with the snake, the talking snake, before that bit, surely he would have made love to Eve. Oh, come on, it would have been the first thing he would have done. Well, not the first thing, but I'm sure later that night, after he met Eve. Hello, I'm Adam. Eve, pleased to meet you. What brings you around these parts? I'm sure after they got over the initial, introductions, that he would have made love with her. Because how long was he on his own for? He must have been absolutely dying to get his end away. And here's a perfect woman. And I really struggle to believe that he never made love to his wife before the snake got involved. Which begs the question is, surely she was already pregnant before Satan did what he did, and therefore either Cain or Abel would have been born without sin. That's what I think. So, let's crack on. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Well, that sounds a little bit weird. With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. I'm not too sure what part God played in the whole love-making episode. Maybe he was spurring Adam on. Go on, my son, go on. Oh, get it. Oh, go on. I don't know. I don't know what help he gave. I don't know. Maybe he gave him Viagra. Maybe he was flagging at some point and God gave him some Viagra. I don't know what help. It doesn't even make any sense. So she gave birth to Cain, and then the next scripture says later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now, later, did this happen the same day? In other words, and this is a possibility, because there have been recorded instances in the Bible, as we know, of twins being born. Were they actually twins? It could be, later she gave birth to his brother Abel. So it gives the, maybe they were twins, which makes this whole story even more, insidious. Now, Abel kept, we're cracking on with the story. We don't know anything about their upbringing. Obviously, they've marched on. Literally, this is how poor the early Bible records or the early Bible stories. This is it's a bit like the Jesus story. Jesus spends the majority of his life, making things out of wood, and there's very little apart from the time he goes missing in the temple. That's about it. 30 years, boom. He gets born, goes to the temple, and then he appears to John the Baptist. Where's the backstory? Where's honestly, where's Jesus' backstory? But we'll get back to that another time, because there's something not right there. So anyway, so now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. So in other words, Abel obviously was a bit of a shepherd, and he kept let's say it was sheep. It might not have been sheep. And Cain worked the soil, so obviously he was into agriculture, and one was more into livestock, to sum it up, And we do get that today, within farms. You get somebody concentrating livestock, and the other one deals with more in planting stuff, and some of them do turns about. And here we go again. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. Right, okay. First and foremost, what impelled these guys to bring an offering to God? Why does God, and I have said this many, many times before, why does God always want us to sacrifice things to him? And usually it's things that did live, and probably it was a bit painful. I'm sure a carrot, when he got pulled out the ground, doesn't feel the pain that a sheep gets when somebody puts a dagger across its bloody throat, or just chops its head off. I'm sure there's a difference in pain, pain threshold of a carrot than a sheep. So why is it that God always insists that we offer breathing things to him, which in their death, it's going to be painful for them and messy? Why would he say that? I would have thought at this point that God would have said, not given any instructions for any offering at all, and say, look, no, I don't want you to kill animals, because of course what we're led to believe is that what we're led to believe here is, which I don't understand again, is, think about this. What we're led to believe is that humans never started eating flesh until they got out the ark, which was maybe 1,500 years after this event. So 1,500 years, God never said that men could eat flesh. So why is he keeping a flock? Surely what Cain was doing was, made more sense. He was planting things because they were booted out of the Garden of Eden, so they would have been a tad hungry. Surely what he was doing made more sense. Why Abel kept flocks when they couldn't eat meat at this point doesn't make any sense, unless I'm picking this all up wrong. But Abel kept flocks for animals that they couldn't eat. But anyway, bizarrely, God wanted them to offer things to him. Why does God always need people to offer things? Is it not enough that he's thanked on a daily basis? Why do we have to kill things and sacrifice things for God? Why? Doesn't paint him in a good light, to be honest with you. So another spin on this is, where did they offer this up to? Now, the interesting thing is, they must have been in the vicinity of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden, we don't have a surname for Adam and Eve, but let's call them humans. Let's call Mr. and Mrs. Human. So Mr. and Mrs. Human had been expelled out the Garden of Eden, and the entry to the Garden of Eden had been blocked by an angel with a flaming revolving sword which flashed. It was a sword which revolved and flashed and was flaming, which stopped them getting back into the Garden of Eden to eat not from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, but of another tree called the tree of life. And if they ate from that tree of life, it means they wouldn't have died. You see, you see how this doesn't make any sense? Because allegedly the day that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, that's the day they sinned. And then God said, if you eat that, you die. But funny enough, if they'd still continued to eat from the tree of life, they would have lived. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Because if you're going to impose a penalty of death, surely by eating from another tree, it doesn't sort of wipe out the penalty. It really doesn't make any sense. Now, the interesting thing is that the entrance to the Garden of Eden was blocked by an angel. Now, believe you me, I've read quite a few stories about these guys called angels, and they're pretty powerful. They are pretty powerful. One guy just touches one guy's hip and his leg falls out of place. Another guy flies over the Egyptians and the firstborn, they're dead. Another guy wipes out the whole Assyrian army. Another, we could go on and on. Literally, angels are so powerful, it is unbelievable. Yet, bizarrely, to the Garden of Eden, it wasn't good enough that there was an angel stood like that, guarding the way. How are they supposed to get past this angel? Honestly, at that point, there's Adam, there's Eve, there's Cain and Abel, and maybe some sisters who were their wives. Yeah, keep it in the family. How are they going to get past an angel? Now, the thing is, think about this revolving sword scenario yet again, this revolving sword. Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, according to this, weren't blacksmiths. They never had the ability to forge any sort of metal tool whatsoever, because none of them were blacksmiths. No, where did they even find the metal if they wanted to make a sword? So the point I'm trying to make is whoever wrote this story, because I don't really believe it was written at this time or written even a couple of hundred years after the event. Clearly this story was written, whoever penned this story wrote it so that people could understand that the way to the Garden of Eden was blocked by something that in their time was symbolic as a weapon, a sword. A sword, because clearly an angel didn't need a sword. And Adam and Eve didn't know what a sword was. Imagine they saw this thing going, imagine if you'd seen a sword for the very first time, what would you think it was? Revolving sword, you wouldn't even think it was a weapon if you saw a revolving sword. Maybe it's, oh, it's golden and it flames and it's, oh, it's lovely, can I eat it? No, no, no. Think about it. They wouldn't know it was a weapon. If you saw, for instance, let me think, a Kalashnikov 47 and you'd never seen one before and you didn't even know what a gun was, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know, fuck me. If you press this thing, you can like wipe out a lot of people very, very quickly. You wouldn't know it was a weapon. So this story was penned by somebody who knew that a sword was a weapon in those times. So in the times of the Babylonian, the Egyptians and all these guys, the sword was a weapon, and that continued to be, the sword was the main weapon for thousands of years. They were even still using swords as their main weapon. God, you don't even, just before we got using gunpowder, they were still using swords in the Tudor times. So the sword was a primary weapon for thousands of years until man used gunpowder to fire a projectile to kill somebody. So in other words, if we were writing now, if we were penning this story of Adam and Eve about this garden, it wouldn't be a revolving sword, because maybe in another maybe 500 years, what it is, swords, we wouldn't even know what a sword is. It'd be a lightsaber. In 500 years' time, if this was getting penned, it'd be a revolving lightsaber. We all know what that is. Oh, it's pretty, but goodness sake, we saw what it did to Luke's hand. And Darth Sidious, we know what a lightsaber can do. It was getting written today, if we didn't know what a sword was, it'd be a Kalashnikov 47 or a revolver spinning next to a big bloke who can kill by clicking his fingers, destroy thousands. So in other words, I'm just trying to make a point here. It just shows there's something really, really off with this whole cherubim flaming sword story. And you can see at that point that this story was written way, way after these events by somebody who knew then that a sword was a weapon. So anyway, let's get back to the Cain and Abel story. So apparently this offering was made. Maybe it was made, in front of the symbolic, physical, the scene that maybe they were doing the offering in front of him. So the Lord looked with favour on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favour. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. So I don't know, what happened here? So next thing is, there's this angel with the flaming sword. Abel goes up with the fattiest parts of his flock, but he's not even eating the meat. There's bits of flesh there. Maybe he cooked it. I don't know, maybe he salted it. I don't know. I don't know what he did. Maybe there was a curry sauce. I'm not too sure. But there it was. Maybe it was skewered. Maybe it was a kebab. But then there's the fatty portions of a flock that we don't know what the flock is. Cain's offering was there. That was more, because it was from the ground, so it might have been vegetables. But he says, but he didn't like Cain's offering at all, and Cain was very angry. So how did God really intimate that he wasn't happy with Cain's offering? We don't know. That the Bible, yet again, it's an important bit for what's going to come out of this story. There's very few, the facts are a bit scant. You know what I mean? It's whoever's written this hasn't really thought it out very well. So we're going to lead to somebody getting murdered here, but we don't know why his offering was rejected by God. No, I don't know what it is. Maybe he snuck in a potato. Maybe he snuck in a carrot that had broken in half, or maybe it was a few rotten spuds, or a few with the black eyes in them. Maybe it's half a sprout, a cauliflower where half of it had been chewed off by one of Abel's sheep. I don't know, but whatever it was, is according to this, is that God wasn't happy and told Cain, I'm not happy about this. Maybe it wasn't the best. Maybe the whole point is that Cain hadn't, as the Bible always tried to do this. The moral of all these stories is, if you do your best, in God's eyes, you get rewarded. If you don't do your best, God doesn't look upon you very well indeed. So then the Lord, now here's an interesting part. We're moving on here. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now come on. This is some sort of poetic word that anybody, you know, could come out. Even Yoda would have come out with something very similar. You can just imagine Yoda. I can't do Yoda, but I wish somebody could do, you know, Yoda, but just spin the words around, because you know Yoda always says everything backwards. Yoda would have said this, but the interesting thing is, the Lord said to Cain, now this is the first time that we've had since the Garden of Eden expulsion that God is talking directly to another part of the human race. The Lord said to Cain, so clearly God is still doing that bit where he used to appear. Well, obviously he's not appearing in the Garden of Eden anymore. So how did he speak? Did he speak through the angel? Was he manifested in another form? You know, did God speak? What? I don't know. But basically, what you know, basically Cain had the ability to have a conversation directly with his creator. And he already knew what's happened to his mum and dad. He already knew there's this big guy with this flaming symbolic lightsaber that he couldn't get in to eat of this. You know, they probably told him, by the way, there's a tree in there. If you can sneak into the Garden of Eden, you won't die. He already knew. You know, was it ring with barbed wire? You know, what was it about this garden? There was only one way into it. Surely there must have been another way. It was a big thick hedge round it or something. Come on. So anyway, basically, that God speaking to Cain is already saying to him, by the way, I can see here that you're getting a little bit jealous. You've got that countenance about it. I can see, you know, let's go back to Yoda. It's a bit like Yoda could see in Luke Skywalker that, you know, he was, you know, that potentially it could swing either way, and that the dark force was building up in him. And the Lord could see this. The Lord could see this, could see the way, God could see the way that this may pan out. So, Cain's still very angry with God, because God not accepting his sacrifice. He's had a word with him, and already God's warned him. Already God's warned him and said, yeah, I can see you're going down the dark side. Turn away from the dark side and embrace the light. So, moving on. Now, Cain said to his brother, let's go out to the field, as you do. Let's go out to the field. Well, they weren't going to say, let's go out to the pub. You know, what else are they going to do? All they are is, there's this garden and field. What else is there? Let's go out to the field. You know, it's only going to alert Abel with the, well, what are you on about, let's go to the field? All there is fields. Anyway, so while they were in this field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Right, okay. Let's just stop at this point. Let's just stop and hold fire on this. That sentence in there is put in such a way that it really desanitizes what's really happened. It really, really does. That the Bible's out it yet again. Somebody here has murdered potentially his twin. He's murdered his twin. Now, in the realms of people who've lived for thousands of years, has this ever happened before? Is there any recordings of even modern times where the population's increased that a twin has been known to kill a twin? I don't think there has. And yet here we have the next generation of humans, and bizarrely, one guy has killed his brother because their God wasn't happy with his sacrifice, and he's already warned him about it. It doesn't make any sense. Because I've known a lot of people in my life, and I've chapped a lot of doors, and I've worked in a lot of places, and I've lived in different parts of this world, and I've never met anybody personally who's ever killed anybody. Apart from, I've actually thought about one person I met in the door claimed that she killed accidentally her boyfriend, but she wasn't in prison. Go figure. So, how many people does anybody know out there whoever watches the videos who's killed somebody? And yet, when it comes to the fact that we do know people do kill people, because there's a lot of murders do happen, it's very rare that it's somebody's a family member. Sometimes it is parents who kill children. Sometimes it's older children will kill their parents. But how often is it that a brother kills a sister, or a brother kills a brother, or a sister kills a brother? I can't think of many examples of that happening at all, unless you maybe go all the way back to times when, to stop somebody becoming a king or a queen, or or a high position of rule in that country or that empire, maybe that happened, and it'd be the half brother anyway. But this whole thing, it just, literally, this guy went out with murderous intent. He was a murderer. It wasn't just went out there and just lost the plot in a second. Already he had the motive to do this. He had desired to do this. If he was up in court today, Cain, in fact, if Cain was in some of the states in America, straight away, did you lead him up there to kill him? Yes. Well, that's it. There is no defence, and he would be put on death row and would be put to death. That's in our imperfect laws that we have today. In certain states in America, he dies because he already had the motive to go and kill him. He already planned it. He knew where he was going to do it. He planned to do the murder. Then he killed him. And yet the way they just write this is, it's just so clear. Oh, and so, how did he kill him? How did he kill him? Did he strangle him? Did he smash him again and again and again? All the details you really want to know, because I really want to know what happened here. How did he kill him? This is the first murder. This is the first death in the Bible. This is the first death in a long list of thousands of deaths that we will then go on to see about. This is the first death ever. How did he kill him? Did he strangle him? Did he smash his head with a rock? Did he kick him to death? What did he do? We don't know. We just don't know, because the Bible, whoever decided to write this years and years after the event, decided not to give us those details, as he was clearly making them up in his head. So, he's dead. Is the first murderer. Now, let's think about this. This is God, and God sees all. So he must have known what would have happened. But, God's funny that way, because sometimes he doesn't see everything. So, then the Lord said, so here we go, the Lord's speaking to Cain again. So how has he done that? Cain probably hasn't gone up to walk back up to the angel guarding, the cherubim guarding the Garden of Eden. He's probably not going to walk back out, because I would have imagined anybody who kills somebody, especially if it's their own twin brother, must have a tinge of sadness, must be feeling awful of what they've just done. Imagine they have just ended somebody's life. And yet it says, then the Lord said to Cain. So yet again, I say this again, how was the Lord able to speak to Cain? How did he manifest himself? How did he appear? It clearly wasn't this angel, because I'm absolutely sure the last thing Cain would have wanted to do is walk back up to the entrance of the Garden of Eden to just go, I wonder if you noticed. I wonder if he noticed. I wonder if he noticed. Oh shit, I can tell him in his eyes, he suspects something here. That cherubim knows something. I'm sure Cain would have kept clear. So somehow the Lord, starts speaking to Cain here. He goes, where is your brother Abel? The funny thing is, he already knew, because obviously God, it's the whole chestnut that when Satan said to, Jehovah said to Satan, oh, where have you been, Satan? Have you been down to the earth, and have you looked at my man Job? He already knew. So why is God asking? So God obviously saw what's going on, and as usual, he did bugger all. There's a big strong cherub up there with a flaming sword, and he could see what God already knew what was in Cain's heart. He already knew what was in Cain's heart, and yet he let Cain go and slaughter his own twin brother. Even though he could have stopped it by sending the cherubim, God in the Garden of Eden, with his flaming sword and flashed it that way, and say, sorry, God could have said at this point, sorry, I cannot let this happen. It is wrong. Because his sacrifice was of his best, yours was the poor, so why should he have to die because of your murderous intent? But no, this is what God does and continues to do, whereupon he sees things are going to happen and just lets them happen. So here we go. So he goes, and here's a classic. This is where this line comes from. So we'll go back. So the Lord says to Cain, where's your brother Abel? And Cain, he's just murdered his twin brother here. He's just murdered, well, let's say it's a twin brother because we don't know. He's just probably murdered his twin brother here. So this is Cain's stunning reply. I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Now, that phrase, I didn't even realise came from the Bible. I've heard it so many times. It's just basically to, we use that to, in other words, it's a phrase that say, well, don't ask me because I don't know what he's doing. Am I my brother's keeper? Because how do I know what he's doing in his life? I'm not his keeper. He doesn't inform me every day. So this is it. What a glib, horrible statement to make by a guy who's just murdered his twin. And he just says to this God, to his God, who he's already talked to before, who's made him angry. It's because God was angry at him, he's gone and done the murder, and he's just gone, am I my brother's keeper? What a bastard. So the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So clearly, God already knew what Cain had done. So why does God put up this pretense of having to, trying to wit it out of people? Confess, just be honest. It'll be all right. He says, so anyway, at this point, when we think about what happens to other Bible characters in the future who disobey, you would imagine that at this point, this is the end of Cain's life. It has to be, because Cain, with murderous intent, has killed his twin brother and has not manned up and confessed to it. In fact, he's one-on-one with God and said to God, how do I know what he's up to? Am I my brother's keeper? He's denied. He's denied he's killed. He's murdered his own brother. So at this point, it should be the end of the Cain story. At this point, God, being the righteous God that he is, should have then put Cain to death on the spot. On the spot. But he doesn't. And all the people subsequently who were put to death on the spot by God for doing not very much, to be honest with you. Let's go back to a story I've already dealt with in the story of Judah and Tamar, where the firstborn gets killed for just being, well, we don't know what did. He erred and got, sorry for cracking that joke again, but erred and he got killed by God, left his wife Tamar, and then the next son, he, as we know, ejaculated on the ground, not inside Tamar, and because he did this, he was put to death. He was put to death just because he came on the ground and not inside his brother's dead wife. And there are so many more new examples of people who were put to death in the Bible over silly, stupid infringements. The guy who touched the chariot, put to death. Silly, stupid infringements, doing this, doing that, put to death. And yet this man, this man Cain, killed his twin brother, then lied to his God that he'd even done it, never owned up to the response, never showed a single shed of regret, never burst into tears and said, my God, what have I done? I've seen murderers on TV channels I watch where they break down because they've shot somebody who they may not have even known, and all of a sudden it's hit them that they've killed somebody. Maybe it's somebody they don't even know, or maybe it's somebody they do know and they feel so sad that they've killed somebody. It's not even a relative, it might be just the mate in some black gang. Usually it's one of these gangs that they are, which blacks are doing. It's not necessarily blacks, it can be whites as well. You know, I've seen people break down when all of a sudden the full weight of what they've done, comes crashing down on them. And yet here's this guy, no remorse at all, can't be arsed. I'm not my brother's keeper. So, bizarrely, God, being the righteous God that he doesn't put him to death. It's bizarre. Instead, he protects him. How does that happen? Well, let's read on. So, the Lord said, carry on, the Lord said, he says, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. So basically, he's cursed Cain and said, by the way, anytime you plant some potatoes, they're not going to grow. Any seed you put in the ground, it's not going to grow. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do, it ain't going to grow. How the guy's supposed to survive? What's he supposed to eat? Dust? I don't really know. So basically he's cursed him and says, oh, you're going to have to wander around and scavenge for food for people who don't exist. Because of course at this point there's only Cain, Adam and Eve, maybe Cain's wife, maybe Abel's wife, and a few sisters. I don't know where he's supposed to be getting his food from, because he ain't even allowed back in the Garden of Eden. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. So Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. I've murdered my brother, but what you're doing to me, you're a really nasty piece of work, because you've told me that anything I try to grow ain't gonna grow. Oh wow, what a harsh punishment. It says, today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. Oh, whoopee-doo. And will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Whoever finds him will kill him. Who is there to find him? Let's think about it. At this point in the world, there is Adam, there is Eve, there is Cain, there is Abel's been killed. There are maybe Cain's wife and maybe Abel's widow. Who are these people? Who are these people he's afraid of who are going to kill him? Who are these people? Because they don't exist. There is nobody else. Who's going to find them? Who are these people? There's only going to be, there's only going to be an honour killing later on. There's not going to be a posse sent out from another place to hunt him down. It's absolute nonsense. So of course, he's a little worried. So Cain's killed his brother Abel. He's been told by God, by the way, I'm banishing you to wander now. Wander the earth. Wander the earth. And then of course, Cain thinks, oh, me. Cain's thinking all about himself on, oh shit. If anybody finds me, they'll realise I've killed Abel and now they're going to kill me. So it's just, self-centred. It's all me, thinking about me. So of course, God now protects this murderer by saying these words. But the Lord said to him, not so. In other words, not so. Don't be afraid that anybody's going to kill you. And this is why. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. That's funny. That's a good way to reward a murderer. The way to reward a murderer, if you're God, is that you protect him. You just stop him being able to grow some crops, but you're going to tell everybody else that, by the way, I'm protecting him, and if you kill him, I'm going to do worse to you 7 times over. What does that mean? Kills you 7 times? Hold on. That doesn't make any sense. Vengeance 7 times. If you kill some person once, then you get vengeance 7 times. So kills you, brings you back, kills you, brings you back. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. How can you have vengeance 7 times? How can you get 7 times killing one? Maybe God killed 7 times your family members. God wouldn't do that, would he? Oh, yes, he would. So anyway, it says, so then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So, of course, all these people who didn't exist at the time, because there was only Adam and Eve, Cain and not Abel, and Cain, you get the drift here. So apparently God put a mark on Cain. There was this mark on Cain. So that if anybody, who all these people were, we don't really know because they didn't exist and hadn't been born yet. If anybody come along and Cain would go, ah, you're Cain. Ah, how did you guess? Well, because we spotted this mark on you. What was it? What was the mark? What mark did Cain have to show that he was being protected by God? Did he have like a... What did he have? What did he have? Did he have a halo over his head? Or a horn growing out saying, oh, you must be Cain. The horn's the giveaway. What was it that Cain had that he spent the rest of his life walking around protected by God, knowing that nobody would seek out revenge for killing his own brother years later on? Years later on, he could have grown a great big beard or shaved his beard, gone bald, and nobody would have recognised him anyway. But apparently he had this big mark on him to show that God protects murderers. God protects murderers. Funny enough, it's odd, isn't it? You know, in in certain states in America, they don't protect murderers. They lock them away, or they put them on death row, and eventually they kill them. But no. God protects murderers. It's bizarre, isn't it? So, it says here, so Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. That's a good name of a film. So, Cain made love to his wife. Well, obviously, he never met her in Nod. He obviously must have taken Eve with him because there wasn't anyone there to meet anyway. So Cain made love to his wife and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city and named it after his son Enoch. Cain was then building a city. Sorry. Cain was building a city. Sorry, I would refute he was building a city. I would say he wasn't even building a town. I'd say he's not even building a village, because who is there to live in it? How in God's name can he be building a city? You know, again, this brings me back to the point that proves that this was written in the times when the guy who ever wrote this story or invented this story, that cities did exist. Cities must have existed at this time for them to use this word. You know, you can't use this word or phrasing to mean something as massive as a city unless cities existed. There couldn't have even been a concept of a city back then. So he built a city. Oh, come on. How could he build a city? If all he was building was, you know, who went out with him? All there was Cain, his wife, and he made it love to his wife, and he had a son called Enoch, and named the city after Enoch. How can you name a city after Enoch when there's only 3 of you? It doesn't make any sense. There's only 3 of them at this point, maybe 4, 5 at a push, but he built a city. And yet he was supposed to be a wanderer. Where's he getting the food to live when everything he tries to grow dies anyway? Oh, anyway, that's the story of Cain and Abel. And as you can see by that story, it makes no sense at all. There's so many holes in that plot. There's so many holes in that plot that I don't really know where to start. It doesn't make any sense, as I keep on saying. And yet, let's come back to this. Let's come back to this thing that people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses and they still believe that the Bible's a good book. The Bible's a really good book. And I really like my God and you know, all this sort of thing. But sorry, please explain that to me. Explain how is it that this God of love, this God of righteous justice would protect Cain, who murdered his own brother and protected him. How does that even add up when you balance that with the fact that he then was so quick to put to death a guy because he wouldn't ejaculate inside his dead brother's wife? Tell me, where is the righteous justice in that? Sorry, it doesn't make sense. How can this be a God of love when he protects a murderer? I already warned the guy beforehand. I can see where you're going. I can see what course you're going over to the dark side. And then he wouldn't, and there was no sense of guilt. Nothing in that passage shows he was only thinking about himself. Oh no, I won't be able to grow any crops. I won't be able to speak to you anymore. People be wanting vengeance who didn't even exist. You know, oh, don't worry, I'll protect you. I'll put a mark on you saying you're okay with me. Everything's forgive and forget. You've only just killed your brother. You know, first murder ever. It's just nonsense. I don't know what that story teaches anybody. I don't know, you know, if that's in the Bible book of stories, what does it teach you? It teaches me that that when it comes to God, a set of standards, that there isn't any. There isn't anything, that is sustainable as something you can say, yeah, that's it. That's what God does in that situation. I read that story and think to myself, my God, that totally bucks the trend of what God goes on to do. Where straight away, boom, dead, boom, dead. For small infringements, he puts people to death. Or people, totally innocent people he puts to death for the fault of somebody else. But here's a guy who literally gets away with murder. Isn't punished at all in the sense that I would have thought God would have done, and God protects him. So God protects murderers. There you go. That's what we get from. So in other words, if you're somebody, I've said before, who still loves their God and thinks the Bible's a good book and God's a God of love, you've got to ask yourself questions like that. What does that story really tell us about this God that a lot of people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses still pray to, still have respect to? Sorry, you cannot dismiss a story such as Cain and Abel, and God comes out smelling of roses. There ain't, more like manure, not roses. There's no coming out of this at all that you can have any respect for anybody in that story apart from maybe Abel. There's no respect for anybody, no respect for God, and no respect for Cain either. It just stinks. The whole thing stinks. And if that was set, as lots of people have they have taken the Cain and Abel story and have set it to modern things. It is just a horrible story. It really is. But anyway, that is just one of many horrible stories that we find in the Bible, and they all keep on leading me to the same conclusion every single time I now reread these stories with a fresh set of eyes, with my witnessy glasses and God goggles ripped off me. Then I'm actually read them and say, my God, what does this really tell us? What does this really tell us about this God that millions and billions of people pray to and worship and hope they're going to go and meet and pray for, things to happen in their life? What does it really tell us? It tells us all we need to know, that God really is just, a manifestation of all the good and all the bad characteristics that we see in ourselves, which then confirms to me yet again is that God is something that we've invented because he has all our faults and he has all the worst bits and bad bits of us as humans because we've invented him. And if you disagree with that, well, it's up to you, but each to their own. I leave you in peace, and if you wish to comment, it's up to yourself. But if I'm getting any of this story wrong, I'd love somebody to show me where I've got these things wrong, but really I don't think I have. Anyway, see you later.